Listen to this passage. In the beginning, everybody shout beginning. God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was formless and empty, and darkness covered the deep waters, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the surface of the waters. Then God said, everybody shout, God said, let there be light, and there was light. And then the Gospel of John picks up with that word and says in verse 14, so the Word became human, made his home among us, and he was full of unfailing love and faithfulness. And we have seen, everybody say, have seen his glory, the glory of the Father's one and only Son. Shout amen. Please be seated. God, pour your Spirit out and do just what Andrea prayed. Work miracles today in Jesus' name. Amen. I've entitled this message simply one word, unbelievable. For those of you who were with me last week here or watching by way of video, you know that as we brought our series on change to an end, we made the point that one of the ways to change is simply to change the path that you're on. But I also made the point that for some of us, because of poor decisions that we have made that have unleashed irreversible consequences, and for others because of broken life circumstances, some of the paths that we're on will not yield the destination that we want to reach. Those destinations are unreachable. And for some of us, the dreams that we have just won't come true. And I'll put a period at the end of that sentence. And I just kind of let you just kind of wrestle with that over the course of this past week. But today I want to pick up where I left off. And today I want to take that period and I want to turn it into a comma. And I want to add 4 very powerful words. If you were here for a night of worship and praise, you know, prayer and worship, you know what those words are. I want to say to somebody that there's a dream that you have that just won't come true except for a miracle. Would you say that? Except for a miracle. And for some of us, it looks like this, that you're looking at the report out from the startup that you've been working on, and the fact of the matter is that you've concluded that it's never going to take off and be the business that you've hoped it to be except for a miracle. For others, the struggle you're having in your marriage, you've really come to that breakable point, and you've concluded in the next several months it's completely over except for a miracle. For some, it's your children or your grandchildren. It's on the wrong road. And you know that that road is going to lead them off a cliff except for a miracle. And for some of you, you've decided and concluded that you will be, you're destined to be single except for a miracle. Everybody shout miracle. The good news of this series beginning today, and I want to drive this point home today, and we're going to look at it from different angles each week, is the good news is that miracles happen. And that God wants to do miracles in your lives. Even if this is the first time that you've come to church, and even if you don't consider yourself a Christian, the truth still remains, miracles happen, and God wants to do miracles in your lives. That's the big idea for this message and the series. Now, I'm going to try to work on helping you to get there beginning today. So, here's the first point that I want to make. In order for me to be positioned to expect God to do miracles in my life, I have to do 3 things. And the first thing I have to do is that I have to open my mind. Everybody say, open my mind. And consider the impossible. open my mind and consider the impossible. Genesis 1 begins, in the beginning, God created the heavens. That word is not heaven, it's heavens, plural. That is the way that the writer in that day was really talking about the universe. So he's saying, so in the beginning, God created the universe and the earth, our planet. That's a statement he makes. Many people think Moses wrote these words of divine revelation. But the fact of the matter is, for most of human history, the conclusion was that that was an impossibility, because most folk thought that the universe was without a beginning, that it always was. Scientists referred to it as a kind of steady state. And as a matter of fact, the first law of thermodynamics says this, that matter and energy is neither created nor destroyed. It just changes form. So it's always been there according to science. Until, somebody say until the mid-century of the 20th century, science began to gel around the conclusion, and in the year of 1964, which is, by the way, the year of my birth, it's a great year, that the scientists finally concluded, you know what? The universe didn't just always exist, it had a beginning. And they found evidence it had a beginning. They call it the Big Bang Theory. And scientists, when they looked at this, what they discovered was so unbelievable that it's just one of a variety of reasons why at least 40% of the science community now believe in a personal God. Here's what they discovered. Here's what they concluded. That somewhere in the emptiness of eternity, the dark emptiness of eternity, there was a spot as small as a period at the end of a sentence. And from that came an explosion. And unlike explosions that we know, which are undisciplined and erratic and destructive, this explosion was creating stuff. And it was so precise and so disciplined and so controlled that over a 14 billion year period, it began to unleash 100 billion galaxies, each galaxy having hundreds of billions of planets and stars. And as the science described it, it began to take on this meaning. It was as though in the emptiness of darkness, boom, an explosion took place. And the emptiness was filled with purpose and galaxies, and the darkness became filled with light. And before we knew it, it began to sound very much like Genesis had reminded us all along. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was formless and empty, and darkness was on the face of the deep. But the Spirit of God hovered over it, and God said, "Let there be light," and light and purpose and creation began to explode. And so science, and here's what science tells us. The rate of expansion was unbelievably precise. Had it happened just a little faster or a little slower, the universe would not have existed. It happened precisely. In other words, scientifically speaking, there would be no universe except for a miracle. And one of the scientists, Dr. William Philip, he puts it this way, and he's a believer, and he won a Nobel Prize in physics. He's a quantum physicist, and here's what he says about this experience. He says, "I see a universe that had it been constructed slightly," everybody say slightly differently, would never have given birth to stars and planets, let alone bacteria and people. And there is no good scientific reason for why the universe should not have been different. But if he was here, because he's a Christian believer, he would say, except for a miracle. And then let's just think about our planet, this planet that the writer in Genesis, most people think was Moses, says came as about of God's, was created by God's power. Watch this. Think about, in order for there to be life on the planet, thousands of conditions have to be met. And every one of them has to be precise. And if one of them is calibrated wrong, no longer. Let me give you a couple examples. Think about the size of the earth. Turns out the earth is precisely the right size to accommodate life. Meaning, if it was slightly larger, the gravity would cause toxic gases like methane and ammonia to press down close to the earth because of their molecule structure, and no life would have existed in those toxic gases. But if it was slightly smaller, water vapor that is now gathered into lakes and rivers and oceans because of their molecule structure would have evaporated, and there would be no water. And because we are 75% water, our bodies, we wouldn't exist. But turns out the earth is precisely the right size. Or what about the moon? We're the only planet in the solar system that has one moon. And it turns out that the moon is precisely the right size and precisely the right distance so that its gravitational pull causes the earth to lean on its axles. So as the earth is spinning, it's leaning on its axle, and that causes winter, summer, spring, come on now, and fall. And it's all because the moon is just precisely placed. And if it was not there, or if it was a little bigger, or if it was a little further apart, the earth would have shifted on its axle, and we would not be there. Tell somebody, God is awesome. Come on, tell them God is awesome. Or what about Jupiter? Have you ever thought, how come comets have not just slammed into the planet and just blew us a piece? Because they're always, well, here's the deal. Jupiter is 11 times larger than Earth in terms of its diametric breadth. And what we've discovered is that Jupiter on its orbit, 11 times bigger, is placed just at the right place so that as the Earth orbits and as Jupiter orbits and as comets and broken planets sling through the space, most of it is caught by Jupiter. And Jupiter protects us as we orbit because Jupiter is big enough and in just the right place. Tell somebody, God is awesome. In the beginning, God created, and it turns out God knows what he's doing. There's a fellow by the name of Francis Collins, who most of you may know is responsible for mapping the human gene. And Francis says that most of that early in his life, he was just an atheist. He concluded that creation was simply made of mathematics and physics. That was it. But then when he started to lead this international team and succeeded in mapping the human gene, looking at the DNA structure, mapping the human gene, both in terms of its physicality and its functionality, Francis looking at it and looked at the ingeniousness. What he saw was so unbelievable about how our DNA had these genes that are so programmed to produce such sophistication. And while Francis was studying it and mapping it, he concluded that it is so unbelievable that the only answer is it wouldn't exist except for a miracle. And he became a believer in God because of it, and a Christian. He said his scientific mind wouldn't let him deny the fact. All right, Hamilton, so what, Pastor, what you trying to say to me? Okay, this is what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say that for those of you who are thinking about does miracles happen or not, and for some of you, you may believe it, but you just need to be reminded. I'm trying to say that the universe is a miracle, that the earth is a miracle. As a matter of fact, your existence and my existence are miracles. As a matter of fact, let's push it a little further. It really doesn't matter, by the way, your status in life. You may be poor, but you're a miracle. Your boyfriend may have told you 2 days ago that you're nothing without him. Send him an email today and tell him the pastor declared that with or without you, God made me a miracle. Come on now. You might have just gotten out of jail, but you're still a miracle. You may be strung out on drugs, but you are still a miracle. You're a miracle. You may be sick, struggling with mental health issues, but you are still a miracle. Statistically, probability-wise, we shouldn't be here except for a miracle. So the first thing that I want to suggest that you and I, we have to do if we are to position our lives over the course of the next 40 days to expect the unbelievable to break loose in our lives is that we have to open our minds and consider the impossible. The second thing we have to do, though, is that we have to open our eyes and look. Everybody say, look. Look for the impossible. The John text is very instructive here. It says that the word that God's spoken in Genesis, that ultimately that word became human. We call him Jesus. And he made his home among us. And he's distinguished by the fact, the reason why we know what God is like, because in him we saw that he was full of unfailing love and faithfulness. Then he goes on to say, and we have seen, everybody say, have seen. Tell somebody you got to open your eyes and look. Tell them you got to open your eyes. Tell them you got to open your eyes. You got to open your eyes. We have seen his glory. Come on now. And what they're saying is that when we saw Jesus, that word glory, the Shekinah glory, is throughout the whole biblical text, particularly in the Old Testament. Whenever there was the presence of God, there was this glory that would just show up and fill the room. And they said that when we saw Jesus, our eyes were open and we recognized there was God right there, right there. But you got to look. You got to open your eyes and look. All right, let's stop right there. I went to the barber shop yesterday. I have two barbers. I have a regular barber that is quite a distance from the house that I have to go to. But lo and behold, I live in Palo Alto, and I discovered that there is a barber in Palo Alto that is comfortable and proficient at shaving me. And some of you will catch that after a while. Some of you will miss it. You'll miss it. So I went to the barber. Now, I've been going to him for the last 3 weeks because I can't get to my regular. And since, I don't just go sit in the chair and say, shave me. I talk to people. So I know his name. I know a little bit about his history. And I've just been talking to him. I know he's not a Christian. I know he generally believes in God, but he doesn't see himself as religious. And I'm just talking to him every week. I'm talking to him. So yesterday he had the electric shaver, and he was working on getting me all nice, and he's working on me. And I said to him, I said, you know what? I said, I'm preaching a series on miracles over the next 6 weeks, starting tomorrow. I said, can you think of at least one miracle that may have happened in your life over the span of your life? And he didn't miss a beat. He said, nope. I said, not one? He said, no, I didn't. But I've been talking to him, y'all, and I've been listening. So I know a little bit about his story. So I said, but wait a minute. And at that moment, he shifts from the electric shaver to the blade. So I am now cautiously thoughtful. As he's working with me, I said, so in between as he's working with me, I said, didn't you tell me that you used to be in the military? And he said, yeah. He said, a number of years ago. I said, well, you were in the Army? He said, no, I was in the Marines. I said, whoa. I said, you were in the Marines, and you can't think of one miracle? And he said, well, no, I didn't do combat. He said, as a matter of fact, Reverend, he said, what I did do was fill up your book of sin. I said, oh. He said, yes. And he just cut it. He said, yeah, I can't really talk about it, Pastor, Reverend. He said, but it didn't really go well for me. And he cutting, and I'm like, who is this cutting on me? Am I in the wrong chair? Oh, Lord. But I'm a man of faith. I believe that God has put me in that chair for such a time as this. I'm going to believe God. I'm believing God. Cutting on me. So I said, okay. I said, so in between the break, I said, so wait a minute. I said, I get what you're saying. I said, so if it was as bad as you say it was, your sin, back that many years, I said, I bet it's true that most of the people who was doing what you were doing with you are either in jail, in the grave, in some drug house. I said, but here you are, owning your own barbershop in Palo Alto, married and cutting and shaving a preacher. I said, you don't think that's a miracle? Tell somebody, open your eyes. And so he said, he stopped. He said, Reverend, you're right. He said, I never thought about that. He said, yeah. He got a little smile on his head. He started shaving me again. I'm cautiously watching. Then I had another thought. I said, didn't you tell me that you've been married 25 years? He said, oh, yeah, I've been married 25 years. I said, you said you happily married? He said, oh, yes. I said, well, wait a minute. I said, do you know anybody who, when you got married, and knowing all of the craziness of your life, and for 25 years, she didn't shoot you, cut you, or kill you, and 25 years later, you are here shaving me, talking about how happily married you are? I said, do you know anybody else that fits that? He said, he stopped. He said, no, Reverend, I actually don't know anybody. I said, looks like that's another miracle. And wait a moment, he got happy. And when he got happy, he said, wow. And he did. I said, whoa. And I get too happy. So I concluded I had talked enough. So I wasn't going to say nothing else, right? But then he started shaving me quick. And he's getting excited. He says, as a matter of fact, Rev, now that you mention it, he said, I guess the birth of my children are miracles. Tell somebody, open your eyes. Tell them, open your eyes. And right there, I didn't need to say anything. So you don't have to fill in all the blanks for people. Come on now. You just have to help them to open their eyes. Because once you begin to see the miracles that God is working in your life, come on now, a miracle is never for itself. It always points to beyond itself, to the reality of a God. Come on now. And the God, while he was shaving a preacher, and he said he wasn't a Christian, but he began to get the idea that the God that had been in his life was full of unfailing love, because when he wasn't lovable, God kept loving him. And when he wasn't faithful, God kept being faithful. So here he is in Palo Alto. Come on now. His own business, a marriage, kids, alive, saving a preacher, because the God who gave birth to the universe showed up in Jesus and said, I love you with an unfailing love, and I'm faithful no matter what. By the way, I've been in your life. You know, here's the deal. They discovered that one of the ways that they confirmed that the, quote, so-called Big Bang happened is because they found a radiation track that laid out the track of the expansion. If you want to see whether or not God's been in your life, and you may not be a Christian, this may be your first time coming to church, but let me just tell you, if you want to see whether God's been in your life, just look back and find the trail of miracles. Because he's full of unfailing love and faithfulness that blows our mind. So if you want to position yourself for God to do the unbelievable in your life over the course of these next 40 days, you have to open your mind and consider the impossible. So later, and you have to open your eyes and start to look for. See, if you don't look, he didn't see it because he hadn't been looking. Start to look for it. God's already doing it.
Thank you, Jesus.
God's already doing it, you know. And some of you just look in your life right now, you know it. The circumstances of your birth. Some of you thinking, wow, my mother, by all circumstances, I know she wanted to abort me, but somehow she didn't, and you're here. Some of the rest of you, the stuff you went through in your teenage years should have wiped you out, but you're here. Come on now, some of you, some of the choices you made should have pushed you off the cliff of life. But despite your choices, you are here today. Find the trail of miracles in your life, and you'll find a God who has loved you from the beginning with a love that won't fail and a faithfulness that's guaranteed. Here's the last thing you have to do. You have to muster the audacity if you're going to position yourself to see the unbelievable in your life. You have to muster the audacity if it comes to your marriage or comes to your children or comes to you have to muster the audacity to dare to believe God for the unbelievable, for the impossible. Now, for some of us, this is challenging. I spoke to a young lady after the night of prayer and worship, and she said something to me that was quite insightful. She's a single mom, and she's struggling through life. She says an insight that she got was that she's always believed that God existed. What she had a challenge with was believing that God cared enough for her to do the impossible. That's where her challenge was. In other words, she said, who am I that God would do the impossible for me? This is a single mom struggling. But that conversation reminded me of another conversation that I had in Boston a number of years ago. I was in this big corporate building at the top, and we had just finished this huge meeting. I was talking to one of the corporate leaders, this big CEO, lots of money, lots of power, lots of influence. And he was saying to me that because of our involvement in some stuff that was going on from a perspective of faith, he said to me, he said, Reverend, he said, you're helping me to believe again. What he was saying, he said, and he used these words, he says, I think I'm beginning to have faith again. And so we stand off in the corner, and we're just talking. And so he proceeds to keep talking. This is a millionaire, powerful, driving one of the major CEOs in Massachusetts, helping to shape Massachusetts' future. And we just started off with talking. And as he kept talking, what shocked me was he alluded to this point. He essentially suggested this. While I believe in God, and Reverend, you've shown me that God is active in some of the places I didn't think he was active. He says, but I don't think God is interested in me. Now, I want you to catch these two polar opposites. One is a single mom who's struggling economically. Some might say, well, maybe she has low self-esteem and so forth and so on. Okay, but over on this side, there's this huge corporate person who has tons of money. Come on, power and influence. He has no self-esteem problem, so it appears. But they both stand in the same place because they both cannot understand why a God of the creation would pay attention to them. We got some people in here like that right now. All right, let's work the text. So I'm backing up in the text. So at the end of that verse, it says, for we have seen. Everybody say, open your eyes. All right, but then go backwards. It says, for the word became human and made his home among us. That phrase, made his home among us. The Message translates it this way. Essentially, it says, God in Jesus Christ moved into the neighborhood. I like that. It's my favorite. But the literal translation of made his home among us is this: pitched his tent among us. If you're reading it in the Greek, it's his tabernacle, pitches his tent. And of course, in that day, people were nomadic. And what John was saying, that in Jesus Christ, come on now, God pitches a tent. And that wherever the people have settled, that God shows up. He pitches a tent right there. And that Jesus reveals it. Well, why would God be concerned about a single mother and this CEO, a person of influence? Neither think they register for God. Well, pitch his tent. I remember both of my kids when they were little liked making tents. I specifically remember, in the house, by the way, I specifically remember Lauren back in Boston. She's a little girl. And her god sister, Cameron was over. And they had another little girl over, Marcia. And they had been trying to make a tent in what we call the big room. And they couldn't do it. So Lauren came to her daddy, who can do everything. Perspective of a little girl. And she says, Daddy, can you help us make a tent? I said, oh, yes. I'm the tent-making master of the universe. So let's just go. So we went on into the living room, and I said, okay, I'll tell you what to do. They had a big old blanket in there. And I said, okay, y'all got this. Let me tell you. Let me just handle it. I'm show you exactly what to do. I said, go get that chair. Put the chair there. I said, put another chair right here. They put a chair over there. I said, move that couch over like that. Move that. All right. Okay, now give me that blanket. Voila, tent. And so they crawl under. And suddenly they were so happy. They was up under the tent in the make-believe world. And they went and got the little plates, and I watched them for a while. And then I was about to leave to big people's world. And then something dawned on me. There was a pulling in my heart. I don't understand it, but before I knew it, I went and got down, and I crawled in the tent with them. And I crawled in the tent, and they started, so we started making food, make-believe food. And before I knew it, 30 minutes has passed. We in the tent having a ball. And I wondered, why would I get in a make-believe tent? As busy as I am. And as I reflected on this, I discovered the answer. It's the same reason why I show up at their games when they're playing. It's the same reason why if there's a play in school, whatever it is, I'm going to stop whatever I'm doing and I'm going to show up. Why? Because it's important to me to show up in their world. Because if I show up in her world, come on now, she realizes how important she is to me. She realizes that I love her. And when she realizes how much I love her enough to crawl under the tent, y'all. And she realizes that I love her that much. And then ultimately she'll begin to trust me. And at some point she'll come to realize whether she's 6, 16 or 36, as long as daddy is on the planet, if I need somebody, daddy will show up, come on now, and get into my world. And that's what God does in Jesus Christ. That's what he says. I pitched the tent. I want to get in your world. I want you to know how much I love you. I want to get close enough so that you can experience me and begin to trust me and know that whatever situation you in, I'm right there with you. Why? Single mother, CEO, because I made you. Come on now. I gave you your soul. Come on now. You belong to me. And you're mine. You just don't know it. And I've got a plan for your life. And I've worked you into my purpose for eternity. And I'm carrying you in my heart. He said, no, I haven't been to church. Don't read the Bible. Don't know the songs. I just came because my boyfriend told me to come. God says, you wouldn't exist except for a miracle. And I facilitated the miracle because I've got a place for you in my heart. And you didn't know I was there. But the only way you made it here is that I've always been in your tent. But I thought I was unlovable. That's your talking, not me. I've always been in your tent. But I didn't think I measured up. That's right, you don't. That's why I measure down. And get in your tent. Wow. What a miracle that the God of the universe would measure down. Here's where I end. That's right, baby. So, amen. Some of you, you're here, and you're thinking, well, I'm not sure. Let me tell you, the fact that you're here or watching my video is proof that deep down in your heart, you may be like that single mom or you may be like that CEO saying, I'm not sure that I matter enough for him to work the impossible in my life. Well, number one, you need to look around and see he's already been working the impossible in your life. And then number two, even though you say it, the fact that you're here proves that deep down on the inside, there's a part of you saying, while I'm not sure, I sure do hope so. I sure do hope so. Where did you get that from? The whales swimming in the ocean, they're not saying, I sure do hope the Creator cares for me. The elephants moving around in the jungle, they're not saying, I sure do hope the Creator cares for me. The trees stretched out majestically are not saying, well, where did that come from? Well, we were made in the image of God, and God has hidden a GPS deep down in our soul, and every now and then he turns it on, and it points us up, and it reminds us that there's more to life than us. And God says, look up, look for me. Because if you hope, come on now, your hope will be fulfilled because I love you. How do you know? I sent my son who showed up in the tent, died on Calvary cross for your sins, and the biggest miracle of all, conquered death and gets up, and he uses a country preacher right now splitting verbs to tell you, I love you with an everlasting love. I forgive you with a forgiveness that never runs out. I want to be yours. You are mine. Well, let me finish it here. You get a little extra. Sometimes he will work a miracle in your life to reveal himself to you. But other times, he will work a miracle in your life to reveal himself to others close to you. I ran into a doctor in the lobby. He's been a Christian for years. He said to me, here's how I became a Christian. About 30 years ago, a young baby came into the doctor's hospital. He had a tumor in the back. Took up half his head. He was about 5, 6 years old. And after multiple consultations, the parents said, we're going to not do surgery, which the surgeon was saying needed to happen immediately. They said, no, we're going to wait a week. He said, why? The doctor friend who's a member of this community said, why? And they said, because we have a little church, about 100 people, and we've decided that we're going to pray and fast for a week. And the doctor friend said, he looked at them and he thought to himself, y'all just so crazy. It's the stupidest stuff I've heard. And you're going to let this kid die talking about going and praying. And they took the kid and they went and they fasted and prayed for a week. When the week was over, they brought the kid back. My doctor friend said he was in charge of the x-rays. He ran the x-rays and we looked at it. What he saw was unbelievable. There was nothing. They ran another set of x-rays because it wasn't believable. And the second set, there was nothing. And God worked that miracle in that little boy's life so he could save the doctor. And the doctor is saved right now. Come on now. He's an instrument for God right now. And that is the same God that says, look for me over the next 40 days. I want to do the unbelievable in your life. Not just for you, but because you've got some family members and some friends who need to see a God who's real. Give God a hand praise. All right, here's what we're going to do. Here's what I'm asking you to do. I want you to get serious about this for the next 40 days. So show me this card you got. Everybody show me this card. This card, yes. One that has lists family, friends, and acquaintances. Last week, we told you to take this card and think about 7 people that you would invite to our Easter extravaganza in the Flint. But don't just invite them. We want you to spend time praying for them regularly throughout the next 40 days, praying that God would do something impossible, amazing in their lives. So these are people that you know and you love and you work with. They're your children, they're your siblings. You know, they may not be Christians, they may be atheists. It doesn't matter, because what we've learned is that if 8 out of 10 people you invite to come to Easter will say yes. And by the way, if they say no, don't worry about it. You just keep praying, because ultimately we want God to do something amazing in their lives. So some of you took this card, you filled it out, and you put it on your refrigerator or your mirror like we asked you to do, and you've already been praying for them. Others of you took the card and put it in your purse, and that's where it still is. Or it's in the back seat of your car. Or you don't really know where it is. You just know you didn't, I forgot to fill it out. No worries. That's why we gave you another one today. Somebody say, praise God. All right, so here's what I want you to do. There's pens in your pews. If you don't have a pen, raise your hand. The ushers will give you a pen. Just raise it real high. They'll give you a pen, but they're in your pews. And I want you, as this praise team starts to sing, I want you to take just some time and just start thinking about people that you love, that you're connected with, that you're acquainted with, that you're going to invite to come to Easter because we believe God's going to do something amazing there. But you're also going to commit to be praying for them. And you're not even going to invite them to Easter in the next couple of weeks. Just leave that alone. Just pray for them. Pray for them. And then when we get closer to the event, you invite. And if they say yes, awesome. And then there's another sentence that says, put your need here. Everybody say, my need. And what I want you to do is be audacious. Don't put the little stuff that you can do. Because if you can do it, God doesn't need to do it. God focuses on what you can't do. Be audacious. Come on, write down. What's the miracle that I really need in my marriage? What is it that I really need among my kids? And what is it that I really need? And write that down. And then you're going to be seeking God over the course of the next 40 days. You can say, God, I want you to show yourself. Have your way. Now listen, if you write it down and God decides not to do it, you're no worse off than you are now. But if he would have done it had you asked, but you didn't. So I want you to write it down with audacity and begin to open your heart to believe. And then everybody show me this card, the connection card. Good. And then on the response to the message, if you're in with us, if you're in like Flynn, say, I'm going to do this thing with y'all. I'm going to be here every week for the next 6 weeks. I may not come back after that, but I'm going to stay for the next 6 weeks. Because I want to see what God has to instruct me, and I'm gonna do all this stuff that y'all doing as best as I can. If you're in like Flint, all I want you to write under the response to the message is count me in. I want you to give this card to the ushers so that we have an accounting of you, and I want you to take this card home. Put it someplace where you can be praying for these people. Shout amen.